Hello, and welcome to our webinar, Legacies of Spanish and Native American Heritages, New Mexico. My name is Desiree Shah, and I'm the Program and Marketing Assistant here at Times Journeys. During this webinar, learn more about our 8-day journey where you'll travel to many of the same trails as the Spanish and see how the Native and Spanish peoples work together or in opposition to create new civilizations on top of the old. We're here today with William DeBise, a writer and conservationist who will be joining our departures for this tour, and John Baston, program director for Alaska and North America at our tour operator, Mountain Travel Sobek. So before we begin, why travel with the New York Times? First of all, each of our small group tours and cruises travels with a Times journalist or subject matter expert. In addition to formal talks and Q&A sessions, your experts are there to lend their unique perspective to your trip. Their informative lectures are specifically designed to educate and inspire you, and to bring to life the remarkable civilizations and cultures of the regions you visit. We offer small group tours and cruises, and you can choose from over 50 itineraries. And we visit destinations that tell a story, destinations as diverse as Kashmir, Cuba, or Provence, and we explore everything from history to culture to politics. Lastly, when you take a Times Journeys, you can escape the crowds with tours that include after-hours entrance to museums and access to attractions normally closed to the public. So now I'll just give you a brief overview of the itinerary for this trip. Your trip begins with your arrival in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where you'll stay at the Hotel Andaluz. Day 2 through 4 will be spent in Santa Fe, staying at the Inn of the Governors. From there, you'll continue on to Taos, where you'll stay for 2 days before returning to Albuquerque for the remainder of your tour. And included in the price of your tour are all accommodations, your tour manager and local guides, transfers, and most of your meals. Your journey includes some incredible highlights that will deepen your understanding of the region. You'll see the unique rock formations of the Keshkatui National Monument formed from volcanic eruptions. Visit the Santa Fe landscapes that inspired Georgia O'Keeffe's artwork. You'll soak in the famous mineral waters of Ojo Caliente Mineral Springs and see Native American ruins on the mesas above the springs. And you'll see representation of how the Catholic Spanish settlers brought their religion to New Mexico into the traditional woven blankets and vests sold by local artists in the area. You'll also visit key historic sites throughout your trip. You'll see the Coronado Historic Site at the ruins of the Pueblo Cahuilla, where the Spanish and native worlds collided. Explore the Pajarito Plateau, filled with ruins and reminders of ancestral Puebloan civilizations from the 12th to 16th centuries. Visit Glorieta Pass, where the decisive battle of the New Mexican Campaign and American Civil War was won by the Union. And you'll take a walking tour of the historic district of Taos and visit the UNESCO World Heritage Sites of Taos Pueblo. So now, I'm pleased to introduce William DeBise. He's an award-winning writer and conservationist, each of whose 9 books concern the land and culture of the American Southwest. He has explored the Southwest through the genres of both history and memoir, and was a Guggenheim Fellow. His conservation work over many years has included land acquisition, river protection, and grassland restoration, and he chaired the Valles Caldera Trust. He lives and writes on a small farm in northern New Mexico. Bill, thank you for joining us.
Well, it's nice to be with you, and hello, everyone. I'm sorry I can't see you or hear back from you yet, but I'm very glad to be involved in this tour. I've been in New Mexico since, I, I hesitate to say it, but since 1972. I came out here. It was my first job after college, and I came out as a research assistant for a writer and scholar from Harvard University who was sort of a famous person at that time. At any rate, I was his research assistant here, and I got rooted in New Mexico, and since then have pursued two careers. One as a writer, mainly writing books, and the other as a conservationist doing land deals, acquiring land for parks and wildlife refuges and so forth, both for the Nature Conservancy and for the Conservation Fund. Between those two careers, um, I've been a lifelong student of the Southwest, really so deeply interested in both its ecological and its cultural diversity. And I think this region is really splendid on both counts. I pretty much get up every day grateful for the beauty of this land and for that diversity. And it's those are two things that I really enjoy talking about and sharing with other people. Um, I'll just say a word about some of my books in case anybody wants to kind of get an advance look at some of the subject matter we'll be digging into. My first book was a general history of the Sangre de Cristo range in New Mexico. It was a combination of cultural history and natural history. It's called Enchantment and Exploitation. It originally came out in 1985, but in 2015, a 30th anniversary edition that was revised and expanded came out. So if you have a look at Enchantment and Exploitation, try to be sure you get the 2015 revised edition. Um, Another book that may interest you is one that's coming out in this August. The pub date is August 22nd, and it's called First Impressions, a reader's guide to iconic places in the American Southwest. And that book includes chapters specifically on Santa Fe and on the Taos Valley, and we'll be spending a good deal of time in both of those places. So you might be interested in that. Otherwise, we're going to be looking at various subjects as we go along, focusing on first the Puebloan heritage of the greater Rio Grande Valley and the enigmas, the enduring enigmas of that long ago civilization that so impressively has produced and given us a living Pueblo presence in the region even today. This is a time depth of human presence that is really remarkable in the United States and in North America. We'll also be looking at the first contact between those ancestral Puebloans and the Spanish entrada, Spanish civilization coming in the 16th century. And this is part of what I think is the greatest single story in North American history, that first contact of Europeans and European-rooted civilization and the native world of our home continent. Another great cultural collision was that which occurred when the Anglos came in, the rude, crude, often vociferous Anglo-Americans, which continues to the present day. In a way, we're seeing the final ripples or the continuing ripples of the invasion of 1846, continuing with in-migration into the region of people from other parts of the United States, even today. And we'll take a deep look into what we call the deep north of New Mexico, the land of the Hispanic villages and the mountain villages. That's where I live, on a small farm in the village of El Valle, which is just upstream of the more famous village of Las Trampas, where I hope on our journey from Taos back toward Albuquerque, we'll be able to stop and see what's probably the finest surviving example of Spanish mission architecture, the church in Las Trampas. Really a splendid little place. And we'll also perhaps talk about the preservation of some of the great features of this part of the world. And as a conservationist, I'm happy to have been involved in some of that preservation work, specifically over at Pecos National Historical Park, the acquisition of which I negotiated from working with the lawyer uh, representing the movie actress Greer Gar.
We've had a bit of a technical glitch and lost audio. What I was saying when the audio fell out was that the acquisition of the land, most of the land that comprises Pecos National Historical Park, was something I negotiated from the actress Greer Garson and her representatives. Some folks, fans of Miss Garson, will remember that she was Mrs. Miniver and won an Oscar for that, and also had a very famous turn as Madame Curie in the movies. And working with her representatives and arranging that acquisition was certainly one of the highlights of my professional life. But speaking of highlights, we all have a highlight ahead in a visit to Taos Pueblo, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And I just wanted to say that some people feel a little bit apprehensive going to such a place because they feel so nakedly like tourists. And what I tell myself, and I've told my friends for many years, is that when one goes as a tourist to Taos, one is joining a very long and impressive tradition. Comanches from the plains in the 18th century were tourists at Taos. Conquistadores from the Empire of Spain were tourists at Taos. Clerics, priests, bishops traveling up from Mexico were likewise tourists at Taos, and so were mountain men from Missouri and from other parts of the raw young nation of the United States in the 19th century. So when we go to Taos, we join quite a tradition, and it will certainly be a highlight of the trip.
Thank you so much, Bill, for taking us through your background. I think having you on this tour is really going to give people a unique look at the area.
Well, thanks, Desiree. One thing I do want to add is that the time of year when we're going to be on the tour, for my money, is the most beautiful period in the year in New Mexico. Those early days of October are, we usually have I hope we will have, but we usually have a kind of Indian summer at that time, and the aspen on the mountains and the cottonwoods along the river valleys should be just at the height of their fall golden color.
Oh, it's going to be lovely.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So now I'll just take everyone through a closer look at the itinerary and what you'll be doing on kind of a day-to-day basis. So on day one, you'll arrive in Albuquerque, which is the largest city in New Mexico, and you'll transfer it to your hotel. Albuquerque was founded in 1705 as a Spanish colonial outpost on the Rio Grande, and the Spanish influences can be seen throughout the city. On day two, you'll travel outside of Albuquerque to Coronado State Monument. In 1540, Francisco Vasquez de Coronado marched from Mexico with 500 soldiers and 2,000 Native American allies, and is believed to have entered the Rio Grande Valley from here. You'll learn what they were looking for and what they found there. Then you'll continue northward to Keshkatue National Monument. This park has unique rock formations that came about from volcanic eruptions more than 6 million years ago. You'll see an active pueblo and catch a glimpse of contemporary Native American life in New Mexico, and meet with some of the natives there before continuing on to Santa Fe. So day three takes us to the Pajarito Plateau, which was first settled more than 10,000 years ago, and ancestral Puebloan people made this one of the most densely settled regions in all of Native America from the 12th to 16th centuries. Ruins and reminders of these civilizations are scattered around, so dive into the stories of this historic area and spend some time walking in Bandelier National Monument, visiting the archaeological sites in the area. On day 4, visit Pecos National Historic Park, the site of possibly the most powerful pueblo of the period. The strategic location allowed the tribe to defend its territory. Visit the nearby Glorieta Pass, where the decisive battle of the New Mexican campaign of the American Civil War was won by the Union. In the early afternoon, you'll take a walking tour of Santa Fe, and then you'll have some free time to explore the city on your own. Day 5. So today you'll drive west of Santa Fe to see the dramatic landscapes of the Colorado Plateau. It's a great place to take a short scenic hike and to learn about the Old Spanish Trail, a trade route from Santa Fe to California. You'll continue on to Taos, stopping at the Ojo Caliente Mineral Springs for a soak in the famous mineral waters. There are ruins on the mesas above the springs, and you'll be free to explore the ancient village of Poseyhuingue, one of the 4 pueblos that surround the springs. Approach Taos from the west rim of the Rio Grande Gorge and drive over a bridge with the river 800 feet below. Day 6, take a walking tour through the historic district of Taos and learn the fated tale of New Mexico's first territorial governor, Charles Bent. You'll hear the stories of the many tribes that came here to trade and learn how the area has changed with each new wave of inhabitants. At the edge of town is the Taos Pueblo, a UNESCO World Heritage Site that has been continuously inhabited for 1,000 years. If there is no ceremonial gathering, you'll have the chance to visit the Pueblo. It sits a mile below the towering sacred mountain behind it, and its current residents continue to uphold the traditions of the Tiwa people. On your last full day, you'll return to Albuquerque, a drive that takes you on the road used by the Spanish for centuries before modern engineering could blast a road through the Rio Grande corridor. On the way, you'll stop at El Centurio de Chimayo, called the Lords of America, for its many reports of miracles. Here, traditional artists sell woven blankets and vests and grow obscure varietals of chile, and there is a great presentation of old Catholic iconography. And on day 8, you'll each depart for your flights homeward to conclude your trip. John and Bill, feel free to jump in if you have anything to add to the itinerary.
Well, John, we're looking at a lot of balloons here. Do you want to make reference to that?
Yes, we have planned this trip to coincide with an event that happens every year in Albuquerque, which is the Balloon Festival. And it's not technically a part of our tour, but on the morning that we wake up, on the last day of our tour, there is what they call the mass ascension of the balloons that's being planned. The festival itself goes on for a week after our tour is over. So if you have interest in visiting the Balloon Festival, we will be including some information about it in our final materials that we send you before the tour. But just let it be known on the last morning, it will be possible if you want. I'll probably get everybody in the van in the early morning and we can go over to a place where we can watch the balloons for an hour or so. But if you would like to more formally participate in the Balloon Festival, we'll be there at that time, and we'll give you some information about how you might get more involved.
Great. So now let's go through some FAQs. So firstly, it's international airfare included. So these prices do not include international air, since we found that guests prefer to use air miles to book their flights, and this gives them more flexibility to do that. What documentation is needed for your travel? So if you're traveling domestically within the US, you'll need a valid photo ID, such as a driver's license. All international travelers will need a valid passport, and if any visas are needed, the tour operator will help you get those. So, what are the physical requirements of the tour, and how much walking will there be? So, you should be able to walk for 3 hours unaided over uneven ground, since this is one of our more active tours. And lastly, what should you pack? So before your departure, you'll be provided with a detailed packing list for your trip, which will make sure you have everything necessary for the tour. So now I'll open it up for questions from our listeners. You'll see a panel on the right side of your screen where you'll be able to type those in. And I'll just take a look now. Okay. So someone has asked, how much hiking is involved in this trip?
We have planned for certain areas where we'll go for some short walks. Kashakatue on the second day is a great place. There's a 3-mile round trip walk that takes you up to the top of the bluffs where the most interesting geologic formations are. At Ghost Ranch, where Georgia O'Keeffe lived, there's another 3-mile walk or so that goes up to the top of the hill as well for an overview of the landscape. There are no long walks or mountain climbs. I would say most of the walking is through the old historic cities like in Taos and Santa Fe. Maybe a little bit of walking around in places on the high road on the last day. When we go to Ojo Caliente Mineral Springs, there's an optional walk for people who want to go up and see the Indian ruins and the pot shards that are on the top of the bluff. But in general, like nothing any longer than about 3 miles, and all of it's optional. So if you would rather just sit somewhere and enjoy the lovely landscape and wait for us to come back from the walks, you can certainly do that as well.
Okay, great. Someone has asked, on our hikes or in the parks, should they be concerned about any of the local wildlife? Bill, do you want to take that?
Well, I hope we'll be able to see some wildlife. We'll certainly see some birds. Nothing we need to be concerned about over at Pecos National Historic Park. They actually have at certain times of year people who go around on the trail before the guests come in, before the visitors come in the day, to shoo off any errant rattlesnakes. But I think we're going to be a little bit late in the year to have any such encounter, which if we did would be actually a big thrill. But no, I mean, one of the things I love about New Mexico is that its environment in general is completely visitor friendly. I mean, the worst thing we have to worry about usually is winter storms in January and February. But we don't have poison ivy to any great degree, or chiggers or mosquitoes in most places. It is a very, very benign environment where you can feel comfortable nearly all the time.
So we have another question here. How much free time will guests have on this trip to explore the cities or their area?
Yeah, in general, we like to arrange for people to explore the town at their leisure outside of planned activities. So there are some meals that you can take on your own aside from the group, and definitely have the better part of a afternoon in Santa Fe where you can explore the town. Better part of an afternoon in Taos where you can walk around and just kind of follow your own curiosity. But we have done quite a bit to make for some days where there's uh, free time for people to explore on their own, and I think most of it's noted in the itinerary as well.
Perfect. So I'll take one more question. So we have one that asks, will we have the chance to meet any local experts?
Yeah, and in fact, at Quawa, at the Coronado Historic Site, I'm arranging for their senior docent to meet with us. Hopefully, this will all work out and brief us on the latest news from the ongoing archaeology being done there. So we'll have that encounter. We may have others as we go along, and certainly at the parks, we'll probably be brushing shoulders with various rangers and folks of that sort.
Okay, that's going to be great. All right. So now I'm just going to quickly give you an overview of the trip. So we have 3 departures for this tour. The first is in 2017, and that leaves on October 1st. And we have 2 in 2018, so one on August 12th and one on September 30th. This is limited to 16 travelers, and it's an 8-day trip from $4,595 with a single supplement of $1,100. So if you would like to find out more about this itinerary, or if you'd like to make a reservation, please call our call center at 855-698-7979, or you can also visit our website to read the full itinerary there. So with that, a big thank you to Bill and John for joining us today. It was really great to hear from both of you. And we hope to see you all in New Mexico. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Desiree.
Adios, amigos.
Thank you.